I want to talk about Dukkha, this second mark of reality. I'm going to take my jacket off though. It's a bit warm in here. Don't be alarmed. That's as far as it's going. Okay, having embarrassed myself with my sense of humour. Sometimes I tell jokes and just think, why did you say that? It's all very well for you, but I go to bed and think, oh my God! That's why I'm old before my time. So I want to start, I want to just step back for a moment from Dukkha because it's one of the things that one can get really wrong, I think. I want to try to give a bit of a sense of why we're doing all this, and then come back to that if I can. And I want to talk about an experience I've had. I've talked about it perhaps too many times before, and don't want to talk about it because it happens to have been my experience, but it might give you a bit more of a sense of why we're doing this. So I was ordained into the Maitreyabandhu Buddhist order 26 years ago, something like that, and when I was ordained, it still is, you get ordained in the middle of a 4-month retreat. It was a 4-month intensive retreat. And we started wearing robes that year, and I remember just before I went, I said to my father, don't worry, we don't wear robes or anything. And I got back and there was all these photographs of me with a bald head and robes on it. I wasn't as reassuring as I might have been. And I was ordained in about 2 months in. So, 2 months into a retreat is 2 months into lots of meditation. It's 2 months into living communally in a very, very simple way. This was pre-internet, pre-technology in a certain, pre-phones, but very, very simple life. I had no contact for that 4 months with the outside world at all. I was living in a remote Spanish valley with 16 other men, in my case, being ordained. No contact with the outside world. A lot of meditation, quite a lot of study, Buddhist study. Quite a lot of silence, 3 weeks of silence I think we were in at that time. A lot of communication and friendship, very, very important. It's not just a question of something you do with your eyes closed, but a lot of communication in the sense of really stepping into the truth of things, kindly and gently and so on, but not just being mates. Being mates is a kind of inoculation against friendship. Quite a lot of communication. We're also doing Buddhist rituals. And I experienced myself as entering a sort of another world of, like a timeless world, really. There I was in robes again. And it feels, it's like a whole other life, timeless life. And every day was exactly the same. You got up at the same time, you did the meditation, then you had breakfast, then you did study, then, pretty much the same for 4 months. Anyway, I was ordained in the middle of that, and in our tradition you have two elements of the ordination: a private ordination, a public ordination. I won't go into all the details of that, but the private ordination simply means it's just you and the person who ordains you. And so I was privately ordained. I was just 29. I was 29. In fact, I was about 2 days before my 30th birthday. And at the end of my private ordination, my preceptor left me alone. I spent the night on my own, which in the middle of a very intensive communal experience was quite something in itself. Suddenly I was just sort of left alone in this sort of vast valley. It felt like a vast valley. And when he left, I performed a ritual that I'd written myself. I wanted to include as much of my life as possible in my ordination. I wanted to make sure as much of me was ordained as possible. I didn't want to leave anything out. You know what I mean? I wanted to sort of call up everything, things that I was pleased with, things that I was ashamed of, friends, even people I found very difficult. I wanted to call all of that up and bring it with me, so that as much of me was ordained as possible. Anyway, I performed this puja, and then at the end of this puja, I had a vision of how things really are. I mean, it's a technical sort of way of putting it. I seemed to see outside time and all that sort of thing. It's impossible to describe. My way of thinking about it at the moment, I thought is talking about Einstein's watch. I don't know whether you've heard this thing that Einstein talked about, Einstein's watch. He says that reality is like a watch, and you look at it and you look at the numbers and you see how it goes round, and from examining the watch face you come to all sorts of conclusions about how watches work, what they mean, what time is. And all of that's to do with actually looking at that watch face. But he said that reality is like a watch that's sealed and you can never open it up. So you can never actually check if your ideas about it are true or not. Just on Saturday night, I was interviewing this wonderful novelist, Max Porter, and he said something about life being completely meaningless. And I wanted to say, you don't know that. You believe that. It's a metaphysical statement to say life is meaningless. It's just as metaphysical to say life is meaningless as to say the universe was created by God. It's a metaphysical statement. It's not an empirical statement. It's not to do with I look and I see it's meaningless. That's what you're actually saying is I believe that to be the case. Just like 100 years ago you would have said I believe that God is in all things. Yeah. It's actually a fully metaphysical statement. It doesn't look like one, doesn't show up as one, because lots and lots of people share it. But if we went back in time, 150 years ago, everybody would share the assumption that God is just a given. Yeah, 200 years ago, in London, God would just be a given. It wouldn't be something. It wouldn't be thought of as a belief. And our idea that things are meaningless is exactly the same. It's a metaphysical belief like that. One could say, "How do you know?" Or even, "Who are you to know?" Yeah. I mean that in a nice way, a nice Buddhist way, which is nice in a certain sort of way. Why did I talk about that anyway? So I had this experience of, I had this experience that went beyond anything that a bit like, shall I say this poem, everything I knew. Everything I took completely for granted as being the case, things like perception, direct perception, things like time and space, things like consciousness, my consciousness, not your consciousness, in my brain, not yours, time and space as really existing entities, a time that moves, a space that I move in, all those kind of rock solid assumptions just were blown away, just for, I don't know how long, because you don't know how long, I don't think it was very long, but I seemed to step right out of time and space for a moment. And that experience was, just completely wonderful. It was like, my sense of it was, oh gosh, I got it all wrong. How silly. Really was like, oh dear, oh how silly, how like metaphysically silly. I just got the whole thing wrong. I thought life was this, and it's not that at all. And it really was as if, how I understood in the actual experience. I can sort of remember the experience, and I remember it now, 26 years later, as an experience of. Something like infinity, something like that. Very crude word. And as a solution, capital S, to the real problems of life. They dissolved in that infinity. Pain, suffering, death, all those things just didn't appear in in that context. And then sort of I was thrown back into words, and the first thing that sort of came to me was a metaphor for the experience, which I think is interesting in itself. It really felt like some incredibly benign figure had touched my shoulder and showed just sort of, and I'd been, without knowing it, holding a telescope, and this figure just touched my shoulder and turned it around the right way. That I'd just been looking down the wrong end of a telescope all my life. So what I thought was small and tight and about me and about my life and about fear and death and suffering and, you know, all of those fears and protection and wanting and yearning, it was like this figure just sort of turned the telescope round. And I thought, oh, good. You know, you can imagine, you just think, oh, it's just not like that at all. Or the other thing that came to me was it was like I'd been looking at a tiny bit of something which I couldn't work out what it was, and worried about it and fretted about it. And then suddenly I saw it was part of this huge pattern, this huge, incredible, beautiful pattern. And what I'd been interpreting as is it a this, is it a this, is it because of my unhappiness, is it to do with my childhood, is it to do with my parents, is it to do with my bullying brothers, is it to do, you know, going around these little few stitches. Suddenly I saw it as being part of this incredible pattern, which completely made sense of those stitches, but it was a completely different explanation than the explanation I was trying to get. It's like Einstein's watch. It was as if, for a moment, I saw inside the watch, and there was a completely different explanation for those dials going round. That yes, they were going round, but the reasons and the things I put on that were completely wrong. And the experience is one of incredible liberation and kind of transcendent relief. All the things that have been hurting you and causing turbulence and smallness, really, you just realise it's just not like that. Or it's a bit like I don't know. You wake up in the middle of the night in a hotel room and you crash into the wall because you're trying to find the loo. I don't know if you've ever done that. Anyway, you wake up, you try to think, where am I? Then you trying to work out and you think it's, I'm not at home. That's what it is. And then gradually you realise I'm in a hotel. It's I may have drunk too much a long time ago. So you thought you were somewhere, and then because you thought you were somewhere, which was not where you were, you bump into things. And then you put the light on and you think, oh, I see. Right, yeah. It was like that. The place I thought I was in, my life and my which I kept bumping against these things. For a moment, the light went on, and the place I thought I was in was not the place I was in. And it was such a relief. And then what happened, of course, is that experience just closed, and I came back to worrying about, I've just been given my new name, and I came back to worrying about that, and my name means friendly, and people don't think I'm friendly, and I'm so miserable, and all that. So the fall was terrible. I went back to my everyday neurotic 29-year-old self. People went, what were they feeling? They don't like. There was such a, anyway. I just was catapulted back into my ordinary consciousness. But the reason I wanted to tell you that little story is because it does. That's why it's somewhere around there that we're heading. The trouble with that is it puts it in terms of an experience, and that itself is rather misconceiving in a way. What I hope that experience did is gradually change my behaviour, because that's the thing that needs to change most of all. Experiences come and go. Behaviour, if I could, from that moment, gradually behaving more and more kindly, more wisely, and so on, that would be the value of that experience, not the experience in sense in itself. But the experience gives you a sense of why we're looking at these three lakshanas, as they're called, the three marks of conditionality. It's not because they describe how reality is. What they do is they tell you the weak spots in ordinary reality, which if you can work at in the right way open into a new reality, a new kind of consciousness, a new kind of way of being in the world, which is what you really yearn for. When you experience it, even to any degree, and everyone has little flashes of it from time to time, whether you've been practicing meditation or not. Sometimes people come to meditation because they've had some kind of flash of something which is suggesting that there's something quite beyond ordinary consciousness. The trouble is, in the West, we've mixed that all up with God, with theism of some kind. And of course, Buddhism doesn't have a God. But Buddhism isn't secular in that sense either. As I've been saying again and again, secularism is too small for us. Human beings are not secular and cannot be made to be so. Our dreams won't allow it, as it were. And if we try to be secular, we'll just create a box that's too small for us. We won't live our potential. Yeah, so that experience is just to sort of, keep us reminding that we're not looking at reality, we're looking at the weak spots in our everyday reality, which if we approach in the intelligent way, we start to see a new reality. Or perhaps better, a deeper reality. All those are kind of metaphors, aren't they? Yeah, well, I'm glad I got that off my chest. So, dukkha then means, it's usually translated, as Shalacity was saying, as unsatisfactoriness. That all experience is unsatisfactory. So that means that from our point of view, from the point of view of an egotistic consciousness, all your experience, even very positive experience, is unsatisfactory. Yeah? Another way to say it would be incomplete, not finally fulfilling. Good enough. It's not Buddhism isn't denying pleasure. It's not denying joy. It's not denying having a good time. I went to see Jackie last night. Not a personal film. Fantastic, I thought. Really, really good. Sort of weirdly haunting. It's a very complex character, but weirdly haunting. With her, she has this instinct for the creation of a myth. Weirdly, it's very interesting. I thought very striking film. Anyway, so it doesn't mean that you don't enjoy yourself, but it's trying to say that your ordinary egotistical consciousness is always unsatisfactory, always comes back to you, and that is always unsatisfactory. And the Buddha's experience is not like that. It's not unsatisfactory. Not in that way. It's not that endless return to this small box called me. So that's why it's important to reflect on dukkha. I think sometimes it's quite confusing if you translate dukkha as suffering. It includes suffering, but if you're not careful, you just think it's to do with things like death and pain. And it includes that, but it's much, 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 much more than that. It's sort of a metaphysical point, not a sort of literal point. I think sometimes it's not a good translation to translate it as suffering. So what I want to do is say a little bit about how we might approach it, how we might approach dukkha, and then we'll try to meditate on it. I mean, it's worth remembering that experience I had when I was 29, that was in the midst of an intense retreat. So one of the things that says is go on retreat. It was after training for ordination for a long time, so I'd been going to a lot of retreats. I'd been studying, I'd been coming to classes like this since I first came along when I was 25. I used to come to this first class I came to was this class. I used to come every week, pretty much rain or shine. I used to cycle from my squat in Brixton, which was like living in an open plan fridge. You know what I mean? Every room you went into was freezing. I remember having to have a bath, trying to have a bath, trying to get as little of me as possible out of the water. It was terrible. Anyway, that's another matter. But I used to just come every week, and then quite quickly I joined a team helping out on the on the class, and I went on retreats very quickly, went on a weekend retreat quickly. So all of that experience doesn't just pop up, it comes out on the basis of practice. Yeah? So it's really important to remember that, I think. But yes, we need to then start to explore this matter of dukkha. So that the first thing to remember about dukkha is the cause of dukkha, the basis of dukkha, is craving, is clinging. Yeah? That's like really, really important. Otherwise, you'll mistake the whole matter. So the reason we experience unsatisfactoriness, the reason we experience suffering, the reason we experience discontent, dis-ease, an endless sort of crumbly sense of life not being quite right. I don't know whether you ever have that caffeine moment where you've got the croissant and the coffee and then the newspaper. You can't quite get it all to get together. And you've got the view and the girl, you can't quite manage them all, There's always a bit that pops out, isn't there? Don't you think? You've got the coffee's fine, but the croissant is not as good, and the seat you got, someone's talking on their phone just next to you. There's always a bit that pops out, isn't there? If there isn't, do tell me how you're managing it. We're not trying to have a diss on pleasure. Have as much pleasure as you can, but you'll notice that there's always a bit that doesn't work. Even that weekend thing where you try and squeeze in as much pleasure as possible, there's always it just doesn't work, does it? If you're making it work, do come and see me after the class. Could I learn it? So it's not that you don't have pleasure. It's just that. Well, I really like the metaphor. I really like is a Zen metaphor. It's our existence is like a man on a lumpy mattress. You lie down, you get comfortable, and then suddenly you start to feel, God, this is a bit uncomfortable. There's bumps in this mattress, there's a spring pushing through. So you turn over, it's better. You feel comfortable again, and then another spring, and that's your life, is a man on the lumpy mattress. I think it's a brilliant, I'd want to say, dukkha equals man on a lumpy mattress. Man, woman, etc. On a lumpy mattress. So the reason why it feels lumpy is to do with the fact you're clinging. I'm clinging to things. Yeah? So dukkha arises in dependence on grasping, in depending on clinging, in dependence on holding on. Yeah. If there is no clinging, grasping, holding on, dukkha doesn't arise. It can't arise. Yeah. This becomes deeply mysterious. So, for instance, the Buddha, as an old man, had pain. There's things in the Pali about his friend massaging his shoulders because his shoulders were painful. So, and he said, my body is very, very, very painful. He was dying, but he said, I don't have no suffering in my mind. So it's not saying. There's nothing kind of sort of silly about Buddhism. It's not saying you become a Buddha and nothing bad ever happens to you. That's a fantasy. It's not saying if you become a Buddha, old age is just like great, and you can kind of run on air or something like that. All those things that happen to bodies in old age happen to him. But they don't happen in his mind. He said, there's no suffering in my mind at all. Yeah? That is the freedom that we can get. We can't stop bad things happening to us all the time. Sometimes terrible things happen. Buddhism is not trying to say, if you do this, we'll have this fantasy life of nothing bad happening. That's a fantasy. That never happens. Yeah. If we're lucky, things won't bad happen, but things are going to happen very bad one day. And if it's not now, it will be to come. We're going to die, and that'll be the one thing we definitely don't want to happen. But what the Buddha's saying is there can be a way that isn't a problem in the way that we think of it as a problem. Yeah? And the cause of that, the answer to that, is to do with our grasping, to do with our clinging, to do with our holding. Yeah. Out of that arises dukkha. If you don't do that, dukkha doesn't arise. Experiences arise, but not dukkha doesn't arise. Yeah. I've also already taken myself into deep water. Anyway, how do I want to proceed with it? So, for instance, what I've been doing in my meditation quite a lot recently, I experienced quite a lot of physical discomfort. I've got all kinds of physical problems. I won't bore you with them. Just too tedious for words, and please don't ask me about them. It's terribly boring. But when I meditate, there's quite very often quite a lot of discomfort, even pain, all sorts of reasons. And what I've been trying to do is more and more just think, okay, so if there's discomfort there, I must be grasping that. I must be holding on to that. Strangely, I'm sort of stuck to it. What's very odd about us human beings is that we stick to the painful as much as we stick to the pleasant. If you've ever had someone sitting next to you talking on a phone, you just get more and more stuck to it, don't you? Eventually you're going to be, hi, yeah, my suggestion is, you just get more and more stuck to it. You get more and more irritated. The more irritated you get, the more stuck to it you become. So in a way, grasping, clinging, all that, I think you may as well just talk about it as getting stuck to things. The more irritated you get, the more your whole consciousness is like stuck to it, isn't it? I remember literally this long bus ride into town and this woman talking on a phone the whole time. And eventually I was in this hell of being my consciousness stuck into my aversion, really. That's what it was, that doesn't have to happen, yeah? That doesn't have to happen. What the Buddha's saying is if you don't get stuck to things, then it doesn't show up as painful, yeah? It isn't dukkha. So, I try to do that in my meditation. You just notice so a simple thing to do is just look into your body and see where is there pain? And if there's pain in that sense of, I don't like this, somewhere you're holding on to that. It seems a terrible thing to say in a way because it doesn't feel like that. But somewhere you're holding on to that. Just like I was holding on to that woman talking on the phone. Or I'm predicting someone's going to be irritating and I'm holding on to that. It goes much, much deeper than that. So in my meditation just now, there I am, I've got my eyes closed in this room. But somehow I still know it's a Wednesday. Somehow I still know it's this class. And somehow I still know that you're all there. And what I notice is that I'm kind of holding that. Time is something that we hold. It's weird, isn't it, when you think of it? Even now, we're all sitting here, and somewhere we've got that little ticker-tape thing going on about where this evening is progressing, where we are, we're soon going to be going home, and then I'm going to... All of that's running underneath us, all right now, isn't it? How long is he going to go on for? I hope he's not going to... Because... we're actually... It's not that time exists, we're actually holding on to it. It's like a rope going past us, and we're holding on to this thing called time. And actually, we're gripping it subtly in our mind, with our mind sense. We're gripping onto something called time. We're gripping onto something called space. I did have one experience in this class not that long ago where I really could feel, I was teaching, and I really could feel, like when you're teaching meditation, you're very conscious of the room. You're very sort of tuned into how the room feels. And you can really feel the room when you're leading a meditation. You can feel how the room is. But of course, the problem with that is sometimes it's very difficult for yourself to meditate. It's like your consciousness is a bit too turned out. And I just noticed in this one meditation, it's only a few weeks ago, that somehow I was holding the room. And I thought, I'm holding it, I'm grasping it. I could just let go of it. And for a minute I did. Completely let go of the room. I don't know whether you felt that. Woo! This thing of dukkha being based on grasping, being based on this very deep stickiness in consciousness, We get stuck to time, stuck to the body, stuck to our mind. Yeah. So it doesn't help just to think about that stuff. What you're trying to do is see it meditatively, that we get stuck. So when you're on the tube and it's stopped in the tube station and you're getting late for your meeting and you feel yourself tense up, you don't actually need to do that. You would absolutely know that it doesn't help. Come on! It completely doesn't help. You must have done that when you're waiting for a tube, or you keep on looking down the tracks as if the bus driver, oh gosh, look, someone's looking, I better speed up. You know full well in that moment that it makes no difference you getting into that little moody thing and turning around and tutting to other travellers and so, I don't know, travel in London, it's got so bad. Worse than in horse-drawn times, all that stuff. You know full well that does you no good at all, that all it does, it makes you stressed, but you'll feel compelled to do it. And the reason you're compelled to do it is because you grasp, because I grasp, yeah? So what we could do as our home practice this week is try to notice when you're getting in that kind of state, can things go quicker, please? Can people get out of my way? Can this tube arrive? Can this meeting finish? All of those things, see if you can notice that you're doing that. And it's not helping. It's not helping. You're grasping your life, and that makes pain immediately. You don't need to believe this as theory. You don't need to say, oh, these goodly Buddhists teaching this. Try it out. Go to have a weekend and try to make the weekend last as long as possible. Try to sort of eke out as much pleasure from it as possible, and you'll find that what you end up with is pain. Go to a meeting and wish you weren't there, and wish it had finished, and wish you were away from it. What you'll end up with is pain, and that's because, on the basis of grasping, arises dukkha. The Buddha's not saying that's what he thinks. He's saying that's what you observe. If you look honestly at your experience, what you observe is that if you grasp, you suffer. Yeah? So then he can say, so if you're suffering, you must be grasping. So can you feel yourself grasping, and can you see if you can let that go? Yeah? So what I want to do in a minute is lead us into a meditation, but first of all, I'd like us for this week to really try to notice those times where, I don't know, you feel in that wound up thing. Try to get familiar with what grasping feels like. Here's me in that meeting wishing it would end. Here's me in that party wishing I hadn't come, but I can't get back. I don't know if you've ever done that. Think, oh God, I wish I hadn't come, and then you're waiting for somebody to give you a lift home, and they've obviously just plunged into a long discussion with someone or something else, and you just have that horrible sense that this is so unfun. I'm trying to bring up young metaphors, dredging my memory. I haven't been to a party for about 300 years. Anyway, but I'm trying to be relevant. So try to really look at experiences where you're sticking to things. And try to think, God, I really want to do that, don't I? I really want to stick to things, and I really think it's going to help. And is it helping now? Let's just for a moment, that's what the Buddha would say. He wouldn't be like all religious on you. He'd just say, yeah, that's fine if you want to do that. Is it helping? Is it helping now? Is it now? Is it now helping? Is it now helping? Or is it causing pain for you now? So if it's causing pain for you now, perhaps don't do it. You can. So perhaps find a way of not doing it. Yeah? So let's see if we can start to bring that reflection in, if you can, into your life. It requires a kind of courage where you have to be really quite honest with yourself and think, I'm doing that thing. And it's me that's doing it. It's not the meeting that's doing it. It's not the person's lift that I'm waiting for who's doing it. It's not anybody else that's doing it. I'm doing it by sticking like this. And then in meditation, you might say one meditation during this week. And a simple way of doing it, I'll give you sort of stages for it, and then we'll do a little bit of it. Really the best way to explore all this is on retreat. But first of all, just go into your body and try to see where are you holding on in your body. This grasping, this holding on, this stickiness, which is a mind issue really, but that mind issue is completely mirrored in your body. Body and mind are two sides of the same coin. Schopenhauer thought that there's basically one thing. He used the example of blushing. He said it's not that you get embarrassed and then you blush. It's not that the blushing comes after a feeling of embarrassment. They co-arise. The blushing is the other side of the mental state. So mind and body is like somehow the concrete element of mind. So if you're grasping and holding in your mind, you'll be grasping and holding in your body. So it's a really easy place to start. Yeah? It's not the end, but it's a really easy place to start. See if you can notice that you're grasping in your body. But then see if you can do that quite globally. So look for a discomfort, see whether you're grasping to that. And then even look to a comfortable feeling and try to see that you're somehow grasping at that. Can you definitely not hold on to that comfortable feeling? See whether you can look globally. So look at uncomfortable feelings, look at comfortable feelings, look at neutral feelings, look at small areas of experience, look at large areas of experience. Try to keep on looking for any kind of grasping and see if you can let it go. Yeah? And then see if you can deepen that into, am I emotionally sort of holding on? And that you need to be much subtler for that. And then, am I holding on in my mind sense? This me, see if you can tune into that. This is me though. This is me meditating. This is me doing that thing about grasping. That is also grasped to me. Me meditating, me making an effort, me doing this Buddhist thing. You're grasping onto that. So can you let go of that? See if you can notice that I believe this is me, here, now. Can you see whether you can feel that as a grasping and let go of that? And then, you can go on and on and on. There's somehow I have this sense of time, but where is time? I'm grasping onto that, and so on, yeah? A lot more I could say about this, and really I'm slightly nervous to even bring it in because they're such profound matters. I just want to at least sort of suggest where we're going and what we might do. But really this is a massive matter that we need to be, exploring day in, week in, year in, month, and so on, and going on retreats regularly and really going into this. But let's finish by trying to have a little bit of a taste of that.